Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. I'm Rob Vanoff, and this video covers Parashat Re'eh, which begins towards the end of Deuteronomy 11:26. And we see the fragment here from Cave 1 at Qumran, highly fragmentary. I had to rotate the image slightly from this old photograph so it would look somewhat level. And we're going to look at these phrases here, just these little bits that I'm underlining, which help us identify the fragment, which is indeed from Deuteronomy 11. Now, again, with a lot of these manuscripts, we don't know if they're excerpted when they're so small. We don't know, meaning is this just a copy of a small section of Deuteronomy 11, or is it actually a fragment from a whole scroll, a whole roll of Deuteronomy? And that's something I'm not prepared to answer. We just don't have enough of this manuscript. But I'm going to guess it's roughly 100 BC, date 2, give or take. And we'll look at some of the letter formations and things as we go here. But first, I'm going to scroll, and I'm going to show you the English. Normally, I show you the Hebrew. What I'm going to do is show you the English, and then I'll read the Hebrew, beginning with 11:26, where you see, I'm setting before you today. It's Re'eh, Anochi noten lifnechem hayom, bracha uklala. Behold, I am giving before you, or putting before you, this day, hayom, today, bracha uklala. So a blessing and a curse. And then the next verse says, Et habracha asher tishma'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem asher anochi tzaveh etchem hayom. So that is the blessing if you obey the commandments of Adonai your God, which I command you today. So just this word command here, that's what we're going to look at. I'm going to underline it here, which I command. That's going to correspond to this guy up here. I just circled him in blue. Okay, we'll go back and forth, so you have to be patient with me here. And then verse 28, Ve'haklala im lo tishma'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem ve'sartem min haderech asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom lalechet acharei Elohim acherim asher lo yedatem. So that's this longer passage, verse 28. And the curse, if you do not obey the commandments of Adonai your God, but turn aside from the way that I am commanding you today to go after other gods that you have not known. And I should actually clarify, it's really way that I. Okay, so that's going to be this bit. And we'll go through the Hebrew as we go. Okay, so now I want to continue on with verse 29. We're going to go through verse 30. So continuing down verse 29, it says, V'chaya ki yaviacha Adonai Elohecha el haaretz asher ata vashama lerishta v'natata et habracha al har gerizim vet haklala al har rival. So this is, and when Adonai your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, you shall set the blessing on Mount Gerizim. And so what we're going to see is Gerizim here and et. So that's going to be Gerizim Ve'et in blue here, and then we're going to continue on and finish off with verse 30. Halo hema be'ever hayarden acharei derek mavo hashemesh be'eretz haknani hayoshev ba'arava mul hagilgal etzel elonei moreh. And are they not beyond the Jordan, west of the road, toward the going down of the sun, in the land of the Canaanites, who live in the Arabah, opposite Gilgal, beside the oak of Moreh? So the Gilgal, that's this one here. So I'm going to zoom out so you can kind of see all 4 points. So the I is this here, the way that I is here, the Gerizim is here, and the Gilgal here. That's what we're looking at. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? That we can identify just from these little bits. I mean, most of this manuscript fragment here, as you can see, is blank text. So I'm going to zoom in now. And what I want to do is compare. I'm going to erase the blue. Actually, I'm going to erase all of that. And I want to zoom in and just look at the Hebrew here. And I think I'll use, let me go back to the bright green. Our first is our Anochi. Now we can't see, we know that there's some sort of aleph there, but we can't see it. We see the bottom of a nun, a vav, kaf, and then a yod. Now the yods and the vavs look almost identical. These two words are the same words. They are both the words Anochi. So notice how, well, in our nice, more modern block script, it would be aleph, nun, vav, kaf, yod, like that, Anochi. But this is not the way this particular scribe wrote that. Now we would put these vowels on there also, like this, Anochi. And that's just the word I. It's what we call the first person singular pronoun, I. But what the Masoretic text has in both these instances is it's spelled as the same exact word, but they spell it without the vav. It's just Anochi, like this. So there's a cholam, and the cholam indicates for us the O sound, Anochi. So this is a manuscript that is using the vav, and we've seen this before, as an added vowel letter to indicate a vowel. So that's consistent with the two usages of Anochi. It's with the person who's listening would not differentiate, of course. Now, if we zoom in here, we're going to see something really cool. We're going to see what does that look like for those who've done Hebrew. Well, that's a kaf sofit. Now, we would write it this way. If you're learning in a modern block form, you're typically going to, that's approximating the scribal tradition. You're going to do like a dalet that's extended. So here's a dalet. Kaf sofit is really like a dalet with a huge bottom leg. But what we're seeing here is the interception of the roof with the side like that to make the kaf sofit. And we're going to see a similar thing. Notice the letter. So here we have an aleph. This is the word asher. But look at the resh. The resh is like this. And the kaf that we see here is like a resh with a, oops, that's not a very good one. Like that. That's the letter kaf. So we can see the scribe made letters differently. And we're going to see a tav later on, and the tav goes like this, whereas we would learn this today for a tav. So the scribes have different conventions that they use when writing, in the same way that English writers today, if they're printing letters, they might use different forms of the letters. Well, here we see a lot of flexibility in how letters are formed. But one thing that's cool that we see is indeed it's still a final kaf. So the fact that they're using a final kaf means they have absorbed, they have been ingrained or trained to use final letters, which emerges in like basically the 2nd and 1st century BC as a more consistent scribal habit. And it's something shared between the conservative temple scribes in Jerusalem and the scribes whose texts appear in Qumran. And so we know that the scribal training was older than probably whatever the split was ideologically. But in any way, the kaf here, the kaf sofit is from the word derek, haderek. The way, and this is back to our was it verse 28, the way that I am commanding you today. And the word way here is the Hebrew ha-derech, the way which I am. And we'd have to go to the, what's missing here onto the far right to get to the next line, which I am commanding you. And then we miss a whole lot of text, and then we get the word gerizim, ve'et. So that's what we see here is gerizim. So here's our gimel, another resh, a yod, a zayin, which just looks like it's a vertical line of some sort. Maybe I made that too tall, kind of a squiggle, another yod, and then a mem sofit. So our second sofit letter, and then we have ve'et. This is another indicator that we know we're dealing with an excerpt, at the very least, from the end of Deuteronomy 11. Gerizim ve'et. So I'll just write over the top. So there's our gimel. Here's our resh, yod, zayin, yod, and then mem sofit. Gerizim. Now how we would write that in modern block form would be gimel, resh, and if we were following the Masoretic tradition, we wouldn't put the first yod. We wouldn't put, it would just be gimel, resh, zayin, yod, mem. And we would vocalize it this. We'd have a dagesh for the bagad kafat letter, a shavah, and then two hiriks. Gerizim. Gerizim. So this is al har Gerizim, Mount Gerizim, and then ve'et. And we know what the next word would be down the next line is ve'et haklala, and the curse al har Eval, and the curse on Mount Eval. So you can kind of see here's our vav, here's our yod, or aleph rather, and then a tav, ve'et. And then finally, down here and to the left, we see a whole lamed here, and so we know this is also a lamed, le. And then we have our old school hey, gimel, gimel, and then another lamed, le, or lamed, and then ha. This is the word Gilgal. And so it turns out this is the word mul, which means opposite. And I should write it actually in Hebrew letters, opposite ha, or block form with the vowels here. Ha, gil, gal. That's how the Masoretes would do it. So no additional letters with ha, Gilgal. Opposite Gilgal. That's what this means. So if we go back and look at our English translation, we can see what we have here. I can underline just the part of opposite because it's like when we see there. That's all we have. We have Gerizim and the way that I. And then we have the I here. So just those little bits of text are what survives on this manuscript. But we know that there's nowhere else in the Torah where we find that cluster. And so it has to be an excerpt or a complete text of Deuteronomy that only this survives. Again, this is from Cave 1 at Qumran. And again, I'm going to just highlight the variations from the Masoretic Text. What we know from the later Masoretic Text is this vav here, and the yod, the first yod of Gerizim. So we have two vavs and a yod that differentiate the text, at least in terms of spelling. And we can assume that the spelling is, the added letters are to help the readers to understand. So just to reiterate, in two places we have the word I, and it's the Masoretic text would be Anochi, like this. But our Cave 1, Deuteronomy 11 fragment, of course there's no vowels. It spells it fully like this, 2 times. That's here and here. So you can see. And then we have the Masoretic. I'm writing the Masoretic on the right side here. We have the word Gerizim, and the Masoretic would be like this. That's a sloppy final mem. Dagesh Gerizim, like that. But what does our Cave 1 have? Gimel Resh Yod, Zion Yod, Mem. So a little bit of variation. If I go to red and I can circle this letter and this letter are added. Again, it does not change the meaning of the text. It helps the performer, the reader, to put the words into the air with the right vocalization. And so the listener, a listener couldn't tell what was written on the parchment. They couldn't know what letters. They would hear Anochi, and they would know, oh, that's just like saying I. They would hear Gerizim, and they go, oh, that's Mount Gerizim. They wouldn't necessarily even be thinking about how it was spelled. So this is kind of scribal nitpickery, I guess, is what's going on here. And finally, what we noticed, if I erase all this stuff, we noticed that we have 2 examples where a final form is survived for us. We have the final kaf and the final mem. So we have a kaf sofit. In the Masoretic tradition, looks like that. Here it looks like this, maybe even a little like that. And then we have a mem sofit, which is kind of long, like that. Whereas in the Masoretic text, they're more like that on the right. So we have scribal conventions, evidence. So this is like fingerprints of the kind of training that this scribe had absorbed and is implementing. It's their writing habit to use these. And they share that with the scribal tradition behind the Masoretic tradition. However, they are diverging from the conservative spelling found in the what we call the Proto-Masoretic text, which comes from the Jerusalem scribes that are proximate to the temple. Departing from that in using the Vav and the Yod as, if I could put those in pink just one more time, the Vav in Anochi both times, and then the Yod in the first Yod here in Gerizim. Those reflect license, like scribal license, or a little bit of freedom of spelling. So my suggestion is that it's not under the supervision of the temple scribes, but in a way, a scribe who's operating independently. But for whatever reason, there we go. We have another fragment from ancient manuscripts from Cave 1 in Qumran that is from this week's Torah portion, Parashat Re'eh. Shalom.